So hopefully at this point you have open your firstnames.py. Yesterday we wrote the read file function to read in all the names, and we wrote the findName function that will find a name in the list of names. So we've tested that. If you search for John, it should return that there is a person named John at Valley. Today we are going to add on to this a few more functions, first of which is a function similar to findName, but instead of just returning yes or no, if that name exists, it's going to return how many people have that name. So we will define a new function. So we will call this function name count. It's going to require the same two parameters that our findName has, the name that we're going to search for, and the list of names that we will search through. Now in this function, we won't be able to use the simple in function because that only tells us if it's there or not. Now we actually want to count how many are in there. So we're going to have to run a for loop like we did up here. I want to remind you though of a different style of for loop that we've used before. You don't have to have a counter when you write a for loop. You can just have a variable that represents each object in the list. So I'm going to go for first name in names. And that first name variable is going to represent one at a time each of the names in names. So it's going to do the same thing as this up here, except without the indexing. We'll just be referencing the first name as first name as we go through it. So now we are going to look for matches. So if the first name that we're looking at, again, that's going to be a first name from the list. If that matches the name that we're searching for, which was the name that we were given, then, well, since we're counting, we're going to need a counter. So up above here, we need to set count equal to 0. And then in here, we will add 1 to that count each time we find a match. And then that's it. All we got to do is return the value of count when we're done. So then when we run it, I'm going to comment out the if statement that we have down here. And we're already asking for a search name. So we can go ahead and do something like this. Print, there are this many people named search. At Valley. So get your close parenthesis over there. Whoops. Now, of course, when we call name count, that's going to return to us a number, so that this sentence should have a number in it when the code runs, but we have to provide the proper parameters for that function. So our search name is called search, that we just got from here. And the list of names is still called names, so we provide that. So I'll test this out. So it asks for a name, and I will do Emily, and there are 17 people named Emily at Valley. So we'll pause here to make sure that everyone gets that working, help each other out. So, did you find what the most common name at Valley is? All right, we're going to write two more quick functions. Yesterday, a student asked, can we find names that have a certain letter in it? And that's one of the ones we're going to write now. So we'll start with just finding if the letter occurs anywhere in the name. So we'll make a function called fineletter. The user will have to specify what letter to search for. So instead of having a name that we're searching, we'll have a letter, but we still need the list of names. We will still need to go through the list of names. So I'll use that same first name variable again, but you can use whatever you want. If you want to shorten it to just first, you can do that. So for first in the list of names. Now, what do we want to do with each name this time? We want to find out if this letter is in that name. Keyword being in. We can do something similar to what we did up here with checking if the name that we were looking for was in the list of names. Down here, we can check to see if the letter we're looking for is in this list of letters in a person's name. So we can write if letter in first, and then all I'm going to do for this one is just print out the name. Sorry, it shouldn't be name, it should be first, because that is the variable representing the person's first name. So for every first name in the list of names, we're going to check to see if the letter we're looking for is in that first name. And then we're going to print the name. So down below, I'm going to comment out both of these lines and simply call fineletter. Now, what letter do we want to search for? Well, we can ask the user for that. So we'll take that letter, we will send it as the first parameter to fineletter, and then of course, as usual, the list of names. And we'll save that and we'll try that out. So what letter? So if we do Z, we get a list of people with Z in their name. But you might notice that nobody in this list has a name that actually starts with Z. So why might that be? Well, it's because I entered a lowercase z to search for, and that's the only thing that it's finding, is the lowercase z's. So we can go change our function to also search uppercase z's. All we got to do is add in right here if the letter's in the first name or letter.upper is in the first name. You all did an assignment a week or two ago where you practice using string functions. There's these string functions like upper and lower and title and all these things that can take a string and change it to uppercase or lowercase or whatever we want. So we can take that letter Z and convert it to uppercase and see if that is in the list of first names. So now if I try it and do Z, now I get people that have Z in their name and also people whose names start with Z. We'll pause here to make sure we have everything working. Alright, the last one that I want to try is very similar to fineletter, but this time let's only do names that start with that letter. So I'm going to define starts with. Once again, we'll provide the letter and the list of names. Once again, we'll have a for loop that goes through all the first names and names. Now this time we're not just checking to see if the letter's in the name. This time specifically I want to check to see if the first letter in the first name matches the letter. So how do we get the first letter in this first name? Well, we've been working on this the last week or so. If I want the first letter in a word, I use brackets 0. I'm going to check to see if that matches the letter that we're searching for. So let's do a couple things here. Let's print the names first of all. So I'll print first. But let's also print how many people have a first name that starts with that, and then we can see what the most common starting letter is. So I'll make another count, and every time we find a matching first name, we will add 1 to count, and then when the for loop is all done, I'll print the count that we ended up with. So we'll add 1 each time, print the name that starts with that letter, and then again when the for loop is finished, we will print the count that we got. So I'll try this. Oops, we haven't run it yet. Down here I'm going to change it from fineletter to starts with. We're still looking for the letter that was prompted for here. We're still providing the same list of names, so nothing else needs to change except for the function that we're calling. So now I will go try and run that. We will do, how about, let's see how many people have a name that starts with R. So there is my list of people that start with R. Let's see, it didn't print my count though. Did I not save it? You might have caught this. I forgot the if in my if statement up here. So we're checking to see if first equals letter, if the letter at position 0 of the first name equals that letter. We will add 1 to count, print the name, and then finally print the count. So I'm going to save that, try this again. So we will do R, and I get 74 people that have a name that starts with R. Notice I typed in capital R. If you do lowercase, it will not work because it won't match. So hopefully you can get those functions working. I will zoom out and show you all the code here that we wrote today, which includes name count, fineletter, and starts with. And if you've got any errors, again, help each other out to find those errors, and you can check out this code. I'll leave it up on the screen so you can hopefully find any errors that are in your program. You can now work on GPA 20, which is the follow-up for first names, and then you can work on programming assignment 17, where you're going to be finding the average length of all the names, as well as the longest name in the whole list. For help on that assignment, you can reference the programming assignment 12, which was the data entry assignment, where we also found the average of a bunch of numbers and the largest of those numbers.